The Nuts and Bolts of Writing, Season 2, a podcast where we talk about literature, the ins and outs of writing, and how to actually start writing. Hi, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk to co-host R.N. Roveleh, also known as Halivorn, about how to determine whether you're writing for escapism and how not to let that show if you think you are. This is an important topic because I think all of us have struggled to balance escapism and writing.
Writing is escapism for everybody to a certain extent. Writing, just like reading, transports you into a different world and helps you become other people and live their lives. It's like magic. But there is a line between immersing yourself in your story so much that you see through your character's eyes during the process of writing and endlessly brainstorming worlds and characters that will never actually become a story because you just like how it feels to be someone else. The advice I keep hearing from every published author, which says write something every day, works excellently if everything you write advances your plot and if everything is planned in advance. But if you've been working on the same book for years and still haven't finished it because you just love developing that setting, or if you just like creating characters, or if every scene you write revolves around the same topic, say you've written 20 romantic scenes already, maybe you are writing for escapism. So the question arises, do you truly want to be a writer, or do you just want a way to escape your problems?
Here are some tips to improve your stories and make them more than just your fantasy that no one wants to read, by the way.
Number 1, does your story have a structure or is it just brainstorming? Do you have a plot and a conflict? Does each scene serve a clear purpose, both driving the plot forward and revealing something new about the characters? What are the themes of your book and how do your scenes explore them? These are all aspects you need to keep in mind when creating a scene. If many of your scenes are interchangeable, if they can be removed and that the plot or conflict wouldn't be affected, then you have a problem. Figure out your plot points and your themes. Make an outline of your novel where you figure out the plot and subplots and the conflict and make sure each chapter drives the main plot forward and adds something in terms of inner conflict as well. Keep in mind, the plot is external and the conflict is internal, and you need a balance of both in order to make the story engaging and relatable. Without a plot, your story will be boring. Without a conflict, an inner struggle, a display of thoughts and emotions to show why the events impact the characters, the reader will not care about the characters enough to stay along for the plot.
Number 2, is your story structured around a theme or themes? Stories should always be structured around a theme or themes, even if they're character-centric. If your story isn't about a theme or themes, you can easily become engrossed in aspects of your character that don't add to the story, especially if you really identify with and love the character. For instance, Portnoy's Complaint by Philip Roth is a stream of consciousness narrated by Alexander Portnoy, and the story doesn't have much of a plot, other than Portnoy ranting at his psychiatrist about his family issues and love life. However, there are clear themes, such as Jewish American assimilation into mainstream American culture and sexuality and shame. As a result, the novel is easy to understand and digest, despite the lack of a conventional storyline.
Number 3, is your protagonist yourself? We all know those stories where the protagonist is just a teenager who is thrust into outstanding action and somehow is great at it, or the blandest young woman or a man who somehow manages to attract the hottest suitors. May it be that your story is just something that you secretly wish happened to yourself? Well, that is escapism. And what happens when your readers don't want to read a story about you? Look, it's perfectly fine to put something of yourself in each of your characters. In fact, it's more than fine. It's how you connect with your characters on an intimate level and manage to make them better, more believable. Moreover, it's perfectly fine to insert your real concerns and experiences into a story because you'll be able to depict them in a deeper manner, reveal things that the reader hasn't thought about before. but don't transform what could be a good story into wishful fulfillment. In other words, into wish fulfillment. In other words, don't make a protagonist that has all your flaws but whose qualities and accomplishments are your life goals. Instead, make characters that are as unique as you and put them into a complex story that goes beyond you.
Number 4, is their love interest idealized? I'll just say it. Love and sex is something that we can all understand and like to think about, no matter our life experiences. So it is very easy to fall into writing escapist fantasy by focusing on love interest aspect. Are your erotic dreams or your hopes of finding the ideal love the main focus of the story? Are you writing it because you want the reader to find their ideal love and experience the sex they don't experience in real life? Is the love interest in your book only there to be gorgeous, to comfort your protagonist, and to offer them incredible sex? Then your writing is probably escapist. This doesn't only go for romance novels. It also goes for everything that involves love and sex. A well-written book about a romantic relationship will show a multitude of aspects about the characters' lives, personalities, and how they come together when the protagonist and the love interest are side by side. As in the case of the protagonist, make sure the love interest is a well-rounded and consistent character, someone who has flaws, fears, and desires that go beyond just being an ideal partner for your protagonist. If the male love interest is not only handsome, muscular, rich, or enterprising, hot-headed, dominating, and possessive, fantastic in bed, and his greatest desire is to love, protect, and satisfy your protagonist, like, for instance, James Fraser from Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series, then maybe your character doesn't represent a real person, but an embodiment of testosterone straight out of your main character's fantasies. To avoid this, give him real flaws, make him hesitate and make mistakes. This way, not only will the character be more realistic, but your novel will also focus not on escapism, but on telling the story of a plausible romantic relationship.
Number 5, are you writing only what you know? There is a tendency nowadays to write what you know, which means focusing on characters who are of the same background, gender, race, sexual orientation, and skills as us, the writers. The trap with this idea is that you'll make your protagonist stand-ins for yourself. And as we've already discussed, that's escapism. And the problem? Ultimately, your work will always revolve around similar themes, plots, and character personalities. It will become repetitive and self-centered. With this mentality, war stories will have to be written by soldiers, crime stories by either detectives or murderers, and historical fiction, well, by no one, since we don't live in the Viking Age or in Regency England. You are a writer. You have the freedom to write about anything. My advice, go beyond yourself. You don't have to only write what you've experienced. This is what empathy is for. And as a writer, you should be very good at this. And also, this is what research is for, which leads us to the next point.
Number 6, are you avoiding topics that need research? Writing a book is hard, and it's supposed to be. If you want it easy, maybe you're just writing to make yourself feel good. In other words, you're writing for escapism. I can't tell you how many people I've heard saying they write fantasy because they can't be bothered with research. And that drives me crazy. Because good fantasy is hard to write and requires a lot of research. When I hear that people are only writing fantasy to avoid research, that tells me something about the quality of these writers. And I'm not impressed. No matter what genre you write, you need to do research to compensate for everything you haven't experienced yourself. This will make your writing rich and compelling. Your readers will come from a ton of different backgrounds, and some will inevitably know more about certain topics than you do. For example, say your love interest in your romance novel is a successful CEO, but you have no clue what a CEO does, and you never refer to what field his company works in, because for you, he's just a CEO, which means he's rich and wears a suit. What if a CEO is reading your book? They will see right through you and your half-assed research. Doing research means putting in effort. And you know what every good book requires? Effort. If it was easy, everyone would be a writer. But it's okay because you're a writer and you're ready to do whatever it takes to make the best book you can.
Number 7, is your writing avoiding subjects that you don't want to think about? Are there things that your character would realistically feel or encounter, but you're avoiding them because they make you uncomfortable? Are issues that would realistically affect your character tremendously, like a difficult choice they have to make, or like the death of a loved one, but you're solving those parts quickly because you want to get to the fun stuff, to the love, the sex, the action, because you don't like it when you or your readers feel too many negative emotions? If the answer is yes, then you're probably writing not to tell a good story, but to feel good and to avoid real life issues by making a world where they don't exist. That is escapism. Actions have consequences, and in a story, consequences add to the realism and intensity. Understand your themes, characters, and setting, do the research and the exercise of empathy, and don't shy away from difficult topics. If written well, this will make your story more intriguing and memorable.
Number 8, are you trying to improve your writing? Do you analyze good fiction to understand what makes it good? Do you think about how to apply what you've learned from accomplished writers in your own story? Do you ever return to scenes you've written to add more depth to them? Do you spend days trying to get into your character's mind, feel what they feel, and think what they think, only to be able to create a single scene? Do you think about wording to use in order to create a certain atmosphere or depict a certain idea? Do you try to structure your writing in an outstanding way that best depicts your themes and conflict? Or do you simply just put everything on paper that comes to your mind as if you were talking about it to your best friend? Writing is a skill like any other. The more effort you put into it, the more you study and work for it, the better you get. If writing something outstanding is your goal, then it's not escapism. But if you just have an idea and want to throw it out there, hoping someone will like it, maybe you're not taking writing seriously.
Number 9, would you read this book if the characters or setting were different? Be honest, would you read the same story but with characters that are someone else's fictional alter egos or escapist fantasy? If your answer is no, then maybe your story is not entertaining. If it relies too much on setting, maybe it's too niche, and people who don't like that particular fantasy world or the creatures in it, like werewolves or fairies, will not find it interesting. If it relies too much on how special your characters or experiences are, maybe they will feel unrelatable. And if it relies on how mundane your characters' experiences are, maybe it's just plain boring. It's generally preferable for most genres that your characters come first before the plot or setting. Show your characters' personalities and concerns in depth. Go beyond the obvious. Because not only should your characters feel like real people, but your readers are real people. So if your characters don't feel believable, they'll know. But this doesn't mean turning your story into character creation. Remember that plot is not the same as conflict. So plot is external and conflict is internal. Even if you're writing a psychological or slice of life story, make it entertaining through your conflict. Keep your readers curious to learn what happens next. Open questions in each chapter that will be answered later on, or set up future scenes in a way that makes readers anticipate them. Make sure that every chapter enriches the main conflict in one way or another. And make an outline and stick to it.
Number 10, think carefully. What is your main goal when you write? Do you want to publish your book? Do you want it to be appreciated by readers and critics alike? Do you want it to be compared to great novels out there? Do you want it to appeal to a niche group of readers with similar interests to you? Or do you want every reader to be able to find something good in it? If you want to publish your book, take concrete goals to achieve it. Don't just endlessly brainstorm about a character. That won't do much. If you want to be appreciated by readers and critics, you need to start reaching out to writer communities online and offline. Many writers have talked about the importance of creating a community by interacting with literary journals, critics, and other writers before releasing one's first book. Otherwise, it will be very hard to find an audience for your book.
So, here are our 10 tips for how to avoid escapism in writing. We hope these help you in your writing journeys. See you next time on the nuts and bolts of writing.